Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the unstoppable bad decision. You know, that deeply frustrating, universally recognized workplace mystery. We're going to unpack the elephant in the boardroom, that silent dynamic that just destroys value, crushes morale, and completely derails otherwise brilliant strategies. Have you ever watched a company keep pushing a failing product? Just think about those painful meetings for a second. Everyone is nodding along, right? But privately, everybody knows the project is doomed, yet nobody actually pulls the plug. The meetings keep happening, the reports keep getting written, people leave the boardroom, go back to their desks, and quietly whisper to a colleague, "Man, this thing is just not working." But it just keeps going. So why on earth does this happen?
Well, it's not bad management alone. Let's really dive into this. Because what you're witnessing in those meetings isn't just some basic leadership failure. It's actually a deeply human psychological phenomenon, and it's playing out in real time. It is so incredibly easy to just blame incompetent executives, but honestly, that misses the true root cause entirely. To understand what actually paralyzes these organizations, we have to look closely at how the human brain handles conflict.
We can actually trace this all the way back to 1957. That's the year Leon Festinger discovered cognitive dissonance. It's a theory that permanently changed how we understand human behavior. And get this, his discovery perfectly predicts the modern corporate life cycle. Imagine day one. A modern team commits to a strategy, loudly, proudly. But fast forward to month 6. The numbers fall, reality doesn't match the expectation, and the frantic justification begins. Festinger realized that we humans have a fundamental, desperate need for our beliefs and our actions to line up perfectly. He called this cognitive dissonance, basically the mental discomfort felt when one's beliefs clash with their actual actions. Cognition means thought, and dissonance means conflict. It's that immense mental pressure, that visceral, gut-level discomfort we experience when our beliefs and our reality just flat-out refuse to fit together. When what someone deeply believes clashes with what they're actually seeing right in front of them, the mind feels a profound discomfort that absolutely will not sit still. And this brings us to a major crossroads: changing the decision versus changing the story around the decision. This brilliantly illustrates the crux of the issue. Instead of doing the hard uphill work to change a bad decision, the human mind desperately seeks the easiest path to relief. It changes the story. The mind hates sitting quietly with discomfort, so it goes looking for an escape hatch. But it rarely says, "Hey, let's change the decision." It almost always takes the path of least resistance, saying, "Let's just change the story to make the decision feel right." This leads to what we call the corporate spread, when strategy fails but leaders refuse to admit it. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this individual psychological quirk scales up to infect entire teams and departments. Picture this playing out across a whole company. A leadership team publicly commits to a massive new direction. 6 months in, the warning signs are absolutely blaring. But admitting the strategy was wrong, well, that means admitting something highly uncomfortable, that the highly paid experts who championed it were simply mistaken. So we face another choice: correcting the strategy versus protecting the strategy. Admitting a mistake on that scale causes massive organizational dissonance. So the group naturally takes the easier subconscious path. They literally stop trying to correct the strategy and they start protecting it. This is dissonance operating at the highest levels of a business. Without anyone even realizing it, the collective energy completely shifts. The goal is no longer market success. The goal is protecting that original commitment. Once that shift happens, the boardroom transforms into an echo chamber of familiar justifications. You've probably heard this one: the market just needs more time. Someone will confidently lean over the mahogany table, adjust their glasses, and drop that line. It sounds perfectly reasonable, right? Very strategic. But this explanation doesn't pop up because it's objectively true. Or you'll hear someone throw up a smoke screen claiming the early data is misleading. They'll point to one tiny, completely insignificant win just to bridge that agonizing gap between "we made a good choice and this is failing completely." Look, they aren't trying to fix the business. They're just trying to reduce their own mental gap. This is cognitive dissonance resolving itself in real time, not through actual correction, but through elaborate, comfortable justification. So here's a massive realization. Resistance to change is very often just dissonance in disguise. Everyday employee resistance to a new initiative isn't always stubbornness. Very often, it's literally just cognitive dissonance masking itself as a bad attitude. Think about it. Leadership introduces a new way of working, and immediately, people push back. Managers instantly label this as stubbornness in performance reviews, completely missing the underlying psychology. Employees are simply trying to protect their established identity. Imagine holding the internal belief, I am good at my job. Now put that next to the reality of the new initiative, which essentially broadcasts, this new system says my way was wrong. That gap is incredibly painful. Telling people that the data supports the change, it will never work because their resistance was never about the data in the first place. It is entirely about protecting their professional identity. Let's zoom out to the organizational level. This turns into broken system feedback loops, when data and facts become useless. It breaks the crucial feedback loops that healthy organizations rely on to survive. A healthy company thrives on feedback, right? If something goes wrong, the info travels up the chain and behavior adjusts. That's how systems learn. But cognitive dissonance effectively short-circuits this entire loop.
We see a shift from updating actions based on feedback to updating beliefs to protect actions. Instead of taking bad news and adjusting behavior, the system protects its past actions by literally rewriting its own beliefs. When the feedback loop is broken, the organization's response flips entirely backward. Rather than updating its actions based on real-world feedback, the entire corporate machine goes to work updating its beliefs just to protect the actions it has already taken.
The organization stops learning entirely. Glaring warning signs are just completely reframed into convenient excuses. A bad quarter becomes an outlier. Thousands of angry customer complaints? Oh, they become a vocal minority. The real-world information hasn't stopped arriving, but the system has stopped listening. Why? Because way too many egos are staked on that original decision. The numbers are not the obstacle. The identity built around the decision is. Leaders often assume that simply presenting clear data will break the spell. They think, hey, if I just show them the spreadsheet, minds will change. But data cannot easily penetrate an identity that's heavily staked on a previous decision. This explains why data alone rarely turns around a struggling company. The numbers themselves aren't the roadblock. The identity constructed around the earlier decision acts like a brick wall against reality. In fact, Festinger's research proved a fascinating paradox. Weak dissonance equals a weak defense, but strong dissonance equals fierce protection. The harder a belief is challenged by evidence, the fiercer the mind works to defend it. This is a dynamic that constantly baffles rational leaders. The people who are most invested in a failing decision are frequently the exact ones who defend it the loudest as the ship sinks. And it's not because they can't read a profit and loss statement, it's because what they are actually defending is the story of who they are. So, how do we handle fixing the organization counteracting the hidden enemy? The good news here is that we aren't doomed to repeat this. We can fight back. If dissonance is the natural state of a stressed organizational mind, how do we build teams that can actually handle the truth? Well, it requires highly intentional leadership to ensure those feedback loops remain open and functioning.
There are 3 actionable steps to build a true learning organization. Step 1, build space for dissonance. Step 2, separate decision from identity. And step 3, watch for early rationalization. Teams need to feel genuinely safe saying, this is not working, even if leadership championed it. A leader has to model this by saying, look, I approve this, but the results say it needs to change, without treating it as a personal failure. And finally, you absolutely must watch your own team's language closely.
As a leader, when you hear defensive phrases creeping into your team's vocabulary, like people just don't understand it yet, you need to recognize it as a massive, blaring red flag. When your team starts saying things like, the data's misleading, or the customers just don't get it, they might not always be wrong. But you have to pause. This exact moment right here, this is where the battle for the company's future is won or lost. You must constantly ask yourself and your team a crucial question. Are we reasoning toward truth or reasoning toward comfort? That is the real choice every organization faces at every single level. Are we doing the painful, difficult work of adapting to reality? Or are we just spinning our wheels, generating cozy stories to protect what has already been decided? The honest path costs something, but builds organizations that last. Look, admitting a team got it wrong is painful. It costs political capital and it demands deep, deep vulnerability. But organizations that consistently choose the honest path are the ones that actually survive and thrive. It takes profound humility to admit something isn't working and completely change course. But teams that allow their feedback loops to function without breaking under the pressure of human ego, those are the ones built to last. So, I leave you with this final thought for your own career. Will your team choose the comfortable story protecting the past or the honest path to course correct? The next time a major project starts to fail, Which path will your organization choose? Will you fall victim to cognitive dissonance, crafting a beautiful but deadly fiction to protect the past? Or will you embrace the discomfort, admit the mistake, and choose the honest path forward? The success of your next big decision depends entirely on your answer. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.